Welcome, coaches, to another exclusive interview for this Facebook group. Um, I've done one with Steve, and now I've got my good friend, colleague, someone who introduced me to the three principles, Jamie Smart. Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Ankush, and hi, everyone who's watching and listening.
Jamie's been someone who's really been quite influential in what I've done over the last few years, and I've learnt a lot about business and client creation from Jamie. And I know unless you've been living under a rock, if you're a coach and you're coaching the three principles, you've probably heard of Jamie. So I'm very pleased to have him on this interview. When I was originally had the idea about having a group like this and helping three principles practitioners, which was in my mind for many months, I did speak to Jamie about it, and there are a number of things that we agree on. Maybe some things we disagree on, which will come across in the interview. But I think we both see that actually having, and I'm putting words in your mouth, Jamie, but I think we both see that having people who understand how to make a living from sharing the principles is a good thing for us
Mm.
getting this understanding out into the world. So hopefully over the course of the next hour or so that we can share some stuff which might help people do that.
Sounds good to me.
Now, just in case someone has been under a rock and they don't know, because I know you're very quiet on social
Yeah.
media. You don't really publicize yourself very much, but could you kind of give a little bit about your background
Yeah,
and because some people have got some views on you being an NLP trainer or a three principles trainer and you change, but again, I know that, but for people listening, maybe it's useful to give them a little bit of your story to start off with.
yeah, sure. Well, so my background is uh, I moved from Canada to England when I was 20 years old. That's where I got this voice, was growing up in Canada. And then I started looking around for jobs, and I'd done like this is a long time ago, right? This is nearly 30 years ago. I'd done computer science at school, so I got a job in computers. I got a job as a computer operator, and that was the first job I got offered, and so I took it, and I kind of went computer operator, analyst, programmer, got into doing project management for these computer projects and software projects, and these things often involved big organizational changes and changes in people's lives, and they often, the software projects had a reputation for going wrong, and so I was always on the lookout for what what would make a difference, what would make the projects I was doing more likely to succeed. And there was a rule of thumb I got from this great book. I think it was called Secrets of Consulting by Gerald Weinberg, that I owned, and then I don't have a copy of it anymore, but it was a great book, and it was the two rules of technology projects. And rule number one was it's never a technology problem; it's a people problem. And rule number two was even when they swear it's a technology problem, it's still a people problem. And it really relates actually to the whole process of making a living as a coach, sharing this understanding, doing this work. And I know this is something we'll have a great conversation about. I'm going to say it's rule number one is it's never a commercial problem, it's a grounding problem. And rule number two is even when they swear it's a commercial problem, it's still a grounding problem. But I want to qualify that. So we'll get on to that in a bit. Anyway, so I'd been doing this work as a software project manager, stressed out of my mind, and managing that by drinking vast quantities of alcohol, which really worked for me, but had many side effects. And so I stopped drinking. And when I stopped drinking, I started looking for other ways to take care of what I now know is a thinking problem. I got into NLP, really struck by it, created an NLP business, went out on my own, all that sort of stuff. And then when it got to kind of 2008, I had a lot of success, but was still not feeling fulfilled, not that comfortable in my own skin. And I was still looking to the outside to solve that. And I'd been this is not my first rodeo. So I'd done a lot of spiritual work. I knew in many ways, I kind of knew that it worked inside out, but I had all these exceptions. So like, oh yeah, I'll be happy when I've got this, or when I've got time freedom, or I'll be happy when I'm on purpose, or I can do what I love. And so I hired Michael Neill to coach me. I'd known Michael. He and I had been friends for many years. And uh, I, I had a conversation with him, and I hired him to coach me. And very, very early on, I discovered that he was using these principles, that this was the direction he was looking, or this was the direction he was moving in. I think he was kind of 18 months into his journey with these principles at that point. And I'd actually been introduced to them back in 1999, but thought it was a whole bunch of woo-woo nonsense, and I completely discarded it. So I was like, oh, holy shit, there must be something to it, I guess. And so I kind of hung out with this understanding, and I started having insights. And it was slow for me, my first insights. Well, yeah, I mean, the ones that stand out in my memory were, several months into the process of learning and growing. But actually, of course, the interesting thing for me, Ankush, was one of the things that happened on those early coaching calls is I'd be yammering on about something or other, about my goals or this or that, or beliefs or what I knew or whatever. And then it would go quiet inside my head. And I was kind of like, whoa, that never happened before. And as I look back now, that was actually the start of the insights, just that settling down, that quiet feeling inside, that sense that I was stepping out beyond my habitual thinking, beyond what I knew. That's where the juice was. And by June of 2009, so kind of 7 months, 7 months into this journey, I had an insight, which was I suddenly saw what it means that we're talking about principles. I suddenly saw, oh, these are principles. That means this is the future of psychology. Geez, that means this is probably the future of humanity. Geez, that means I've got to get off the horse I've been riding on and move in a different direction. And that hit me all at once. Like I had never, in a million years, if you'd have told me when I signed up for coaching, if you'd have said to me, oh, by the way, you're going to be getting out of the NLP business, I would have been like, no way. I was quite well known in that world. I had a lot of products and a lot of followers and that sort of thing. But all of a sudden, it just was obvious to me that I was going to be moving in a different direction. And so that's the direction I've been moving in ever since. So that was whatever it was, 6, 7 years ago. I've been moving in this direction ever since. And that gets us to where we are today. And along the way, it's funny, I was watching your video intro to this Facebook group this morning, and I heard what you were saying about you've tried things out that you've learned in other groups. Some of them worked, some of them didn't really fit with the kind of the spirit or the feel or these principles. And how it looks to me is like, because I've discovered lots of things that used to work for me, and they kind of stopped working when I was trying to share something deeper. And so there's been an evolution of how do you teach this? How do you live this? How do you impact someone with this understanding? How do you earn a living from it? How do you sell? when what you're selling is effectively the a deeper understanding of these principles and the results that you know open offers and opens to people. So it's yeah, it's fascinating, fascinating.
So there are so many ways that we could go with this interview, and I know you wanted to talk about grounding a bit more, but I'll come back to that because
Sure.
I want to stick with your story right now. One thing that I really got when I started working with you 3 years ago, um, I I looked at what did Jamie do, because I saw that you had quite rapidly you'd done very well in NLP, and then you'd kind of switched over to sharing the principles. And I believe at the beginning it wasn't a full switch, but you know, after some time, like you said, you went, okay, now I'm going kind of full hog with the principles. And you've, like you say, it's been 7 years, which isn't a long amount of time. And when I met you, what, it must have been 4 years that you were, you know, since you were introduced to the principles, and you've kind of become a leading figure, if you like, in this community, and been quite. I remember Elsie, talking to Elsie Spittle, and told her I'd done some training with you, and she said, you know, I'm not gonna. I was gonna do a Elsie voice, but I'm not gonna do that. I'll probably get in trouble. But you know, she said, Jamie's brought a lot of people to us. Jamie's brought a lot of people to this understanding. So I won't ask you the how to, but I'm really curious. What did you do? I've got a view what you did, but I want to hear from yourself. What did you do over the last 7 years to really help you, not the business side, but in terms of helping you deepen your understanding to get yourself in a position that now you're considered like a leading light in this field?
Okay, so and in a way, the understanding and the business side and all of that, and the impact and the visibility, they're all connected actually. So what did I do? Well, it as soon as I saw like the I was already in like I early, probably I don't know, January, February, March of the kind of the first year I was really working with Michael. Um, First big insight I had was, oh, everything I've been looking for outside of me in terms of a felt experience of life, actually, it's all from inside. I really saw that it was a trick of the mind and that I'd been looking in the wrong place. And I had known that intellectually before then. That wasn't it wasn't news to me intellectually, but I had just had so much a sudden felt experience of it while I was asleep and dreaming, believe it or not. Like I literally sleep, woke up feeling amazing and going, oh, holy shit. It's like a, funhouse mirror kind of thing. You know, those fun houses at the
Mm.
fair where it's got all funny mirrors that are an optical illusion.
Yeah.
I saw it. Oh, it's all been an optical illusion. So that was big for me. And then the next one was that I suddenly saw, while I was sitting, I had a group of friends around my house. I had a men's group at the time. And so we would meet up every 2 weeks or something. And I had these guys around my house. So this was maybe April, May of that year. I've actually got a recording. I said, can can I do a talk to you guys about this stuff I've been learning? So here's the thing. I want to underline this. There's this quote from Sid Banks that I came across the other day, and he said, it's not. I can't quote it directly. I don't want to go and look it up at the moment. But he said, sharing this understanding is like lubricant for your understanding getting deeper, for your life. Share this understanding. That's how you grow. That's how you get more. Well, one of the things I did, I had this group of guys, and it wasn't like this was my buddies. This is guys who I was hanging out with. These are my friends. We get together every couple of weeks and share what's been going on, that sort of thing. And I said, hey, guys, I've been exploring this interesting stuff, and I'd love to share it with you. Could I talk to you about it and make a recording of it? And they said, sure. So I did that and recorded it. And then we listened to a Sid Banks recording afterwards. The first Sid Banks recording I ever got is called Beyond Psychology, and that someone gave me a CD of. And we listened to that. And while we were listening to that, I just got hit with this sudden insight, which was like, oh, the fact that you can even see or hear or feel or smell or taste, the fact that you can perceive at all, the fact that you're having an experience of life absolutely means that you have the source of creativity, the source of abundance, the source of security and resilience and clarity and peace of mind and motivation, all there within you. It's all already there. Now, I'd had that idea for many years as an NLP trainer. We used to say, well, people have all the resources they need, and was like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. That if you act like that, you're going to get better results than if you don't. But I went from it being a really good idea that had got me good results to being something like that I know, like I know my own name now. I suddenly knew it. That's an insight. And how it looks to me, Kush, is that that was an insight into a spiritual fact, something that's already true about life, something that is not a matter of opinion. Now, someone who's watching might go, oh, well, no, that's just a belief. And I would understand that perspective. I used to be that guy who saw everything as beliefs. And there's a way in which that's true. I mean, the words that I'm using and the perceptions that each of us have, those are all thought generated metaphors, you could say. Even your experience of your own physical being is a internally generated metaphor. But what I glimpsed for a moment was where that comes from and what the implications of that are. So I saw we already have it. So one of the first things I did was I started sharing this right away. Started sharing what I'd seen as it made sense to me. And you've sparked my interest, actually. I'm going to see if I can dig out the first talk I ever gave on this and then cringe for 30 minutes as I listen to it. I might even share it with you. But here's the interesting thing. Maybe I'll even share it with the people in this group if I can find it. Because my willingness to share it, to record it, and then to put it out, even though I knew I had only seen like the barest fraction of it. That's one of the things that I think has really helped me with this. Now, it got to say, it pissed a lot of people off when I first started doing it because he's doing it wrong. He's not sharing the principles. He's mixing the principles in NLP. Da, 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 da. But it just didn't make sense to me not to share something that was impacting me. So I shared it. And when I first started sharing it, I shared it very inexpertly. I shared it. I shudder to think of the misunderstandings that I propagated by doing that. But that's part of how my own understanding deepened. I remember a few years ago, I was doing a retreat in St. Lucia in the Caribbean. And we were there for 5 days, small group, like 9, 10 people. And just beautiful, a few hours each day, just really sharing deeply and people having insights and then just going and enjoying the environment and that sort of thing. And when I got back to London, I said to my friend, I said, wow, I just understand these principles so much more deeply now than I did when I laughed. And he said, oh, like what? I said, and I told him something, or like you're living in the feeling of thought in the moment. He's like, dude, you've been saying that for a year. I'm like, yeah, but now I see it so much more deeply. It's the words can't really represent, so it's kind of interesting as you see this more deeply for yourself. It's not just that you have better ways of describing it. Maybe you don't even have a different way of understanding it intellectually, but you've seen something more deeply. So sharing right away really, really has helped me. And, I really prioritized learning. So getting around people who already had a deep understanding of this, and spending time with them. So I hired coaches, I went on courses, I did intensives, I went to retreats, I listened to all kinds of stuff. And I got to say, I impeded my progress to some degree because I kind of thought this was a mastery model. So I was trying to master it. And so I was like, well, I'll just listen to X number of hours of tape every day and really practice. It doesn't really work like that. So it was it was a process of my own understanding continuing to deepen. Um, and then, but now here's the other thing, Kush. I already had a going concern. I already had a business, a coaching practice, a training business, a product business, all that stuff. I already had that up and running. And so, I talk about, and this is just a concept, but I talk about there are three transformations that people go through. One's their personal transformation, their grounding. Another is their ability to share it with another person. And then another is their commercial transformation, their livelihood. So you've probably met people who have clearly, and know people who have clearly been deeply impacted by this at a personal level. Like it's really done something for them. And then you say to them, oh, well, tell me about what you've seen. And they get kind of insecure. And then, well, that's grounding, but it has an effect on their impact, their ability to share with another person. So if we take the domain of coaching, I know if you're listening to this, maybe you've just trained in the principles and nothing else, but chances are you've had other sources of input to your coaching and other stuff you've tried that worked, or maybe you've done NLP or been on coaching courses or that sort of thing. What I'll often see is that people, when they go to share this understanding, they're coming from a really deep feeling, and then maybe they get insecure while they're with the client. And the moment they get insecure, they go, oh, I'll jump back into something else that I know works. Because, well, that's kind of, well, let's talk about grounding for a second. See, as I see it, Kush, grounding is just a way of saying level of consciousness, clarity of understanding, is your understanding of how life works. And life has all kinds of bits to it, like for instance, I used to go to the gym sporadically. So what would happen is I would get really out of shape, and once I was tipping the scales at a very high level, I said, I got to get to the gym and get in shape. And I'd go to the gym and I'd smash it out because I'm kind of an intense guy. And then relatively quickly, within 3 to 7 visits, I would injure myself in some way, and then I would stop going to the gym. So, a lot of times on Three Principles groups, I'll see people ask a genuine question, like, how do I accomplish this, or how do I accomplish that, or how do I do this, or what ideas do people have about how to do that? And a certain number of the replies come back, just follow your wisdom. And I'm like, what if they were following their wisdom when they asked the question? Like, so I guess 2 years ago, I go, you know what? It's time for me to get fit. I'm like, and I reflect, and I thought, when I've started going to the gym before, I've ended up injuring myself and stopped going to the gym. I thought, you know what? It's not about achieving a particular weight target or anything like that. This is about having lifelong good health. This is about having a healthy life. This is not about a 6-month goal or trying to nail something in the next year or something. This is about, or getting a swimsuit body for summer. This is about being healthy and having a good life. So I thought about that, and I'm like, find a trainer. So I go and I find someone who knows about fitness, who knows about training, who knows about weightlifting, who knows about all these things. And then I get him to instruct me on good technique. Well, that was wisdom. That was wisdom. So to me, there are all kinds of different aspects of life. And in my experience, an understanding of these principles is just one of the most leveraged things to help you do whatever you want to do and learn whatever you want to learn. And as your understanding continues to deepen, you'll feel a freedom to go in whatever direction makes sense. I'll give you an example. Here's a personal grounding example. So I'm going to jump ahead in time. One of the things I've noticed over the last year or two is that the internet and social media, the combination of it being easier for people to create content, easier for people to do stuff, easier for people to create everything from web pages to Facebook groups to Facebook events, and the emergence of things like Meetup and YouTube and all these things. I mean, all of a sudden, the amount of overwhelm that people are getting in terms of so much information coming at them and that sort of thing was making it harder to fill events. So in the past, it used to be, I could just send out an email, say, hey, we're doing an event. Here's the amazing stuff that's going to happen. And here's a video of me talking about it. Send a bunch of people to it, and they'd all book on the program. So I noticed that that was starting to diminish. And I thought, well, you know what? That's a trend. That's a trend. That's not about me. I just need to make my video shinier or anything like that. That's a trend. So I thought, you know what? What am I going to do about this, wisdom? Because I can't change the trend that's happening in society. Not that one, anyway. So I reflected on it. I go, oh, you need to go back to school. You need to, and I realized that I hadn't really learned much new about marketing in a long time. So I'd done a bunch of learning very early on when I first started my business. I'd read lots of books and I'd experimented and tried things out. And I had a few people that I really loved, like Seth Godin and Cialdini and these guys. And I put a lot of it into practice. But I didn't really study or learn that much additional stuff. And I did good based on what I learned. But all of a sudden I realized, oh, it's time for you to go back to school. So I was like, I started looking around and I got in touch with a friend of mine who's really good at marketing, a real, genius at that stuff. And I said, here's what's going on. What do you recommend? He said, come and do a course with me. And so I'm like, okay. So I did. Well, I was blown away. I do this thing called Project Glasswing, which is about helping coaches and therapists and trainers and folks like that to create business results. That program, we went from struggling to get a bunch of people in the room using our old way of doing it to having like waiting lists and sold out programs at triple the price, because I went back to school and learned new stuff about the fact of how. So my understanding, Ankush, of the principles of marketing, the principles of selling, the principles of why people make the decisions they do, why they don't make decisions. I have a way better understanding of that now than I did 18 months ago. So it's having a really positive impact commercially. But again, that's grounding, but it's grounding in the principles behind marketing, or the nature of marketing. Now, here's the thing. All of the principles of marketing can be explained and described from a three principles perspective. It's all about separate realities and all about where people believe their feelings are coming from and all that sort of stuff. But that doesn't mean you don't have to learn about it. Another trend I've seen in the principles world is people creating events that have very super low-key pages about them, and then wondering why no one books on them, because they're not, looking at it from the other person's perspective. We live in separate realities. You need to adopt the other person's perspective. So, or at least you need to be willing to go there. So to me, it's all grounding, but that doesn't mean it's all grounding in the principles and you don't have to learn anything else. Like if someone wants to learn to drive a car, go take driving lessons. Don't, listen to 15 Sid Banks tapes and then think you'll be able to drive because you'll just follow your wisdom. That's just dumb.
No, I love that you say that, and I do agree with that, because I found, and what my understanding is kind of developed is, there's understanding the principles, which is one area which does impact everything else that I do. Of course, it's kind of my foundation, but there are also different areas of my life, like you say, kind of working out and my health and eating well. Now, if I've got a deeper understanding of the principles, it makes it easier to follow a health plan, but also it's useful to me to work out, well, what foods are good for me, what foods aren't good for me.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely true within coaching. And I think I confused before that all I needed to do was understand the principles, and that means I can coach. And I found that there are different areas to that what my understanding of the principles is absolutely helps me to take the steps I need to take to be a coach and to impact people and to make money from it and make a living from it. But there are other things that I've needed to learn along the way, and that's kind of why I create the group to share some of that, because I thought if I've gone through that process, I'm sure other people are in the same position too.